Imagine you spent months, maybe even a full year, just like saving up for front row tickets to see your absolute favorite band in the world.
Oh yeah, that ultimate payoff moment. The peak of all that planning.
Exactly. You've booked the hotel, you flew to the city, you fought your way through the crowds into the arena, the stadium is packed to the rafters, the lights go down, and the anticipation in the room is just electric.
Right, you're just waiting for that first guitar riff.
Yes, the riffs start, the crowd is going completely wild, but then the arena lights suddenly snap back on. And the announcer comes over the loudspeaker and says, "Hey, everyone, really sorry, but the lead singer is sick tonight. He's not coming out. But hey, please enjoy an extended acoustic set from the bass player."
Which, I mean, that completely and fundamentally alters the reality of what you just paid for.
Yeah.
Because you are still technically at a concert, and the music is indeed playing. And, well, the bass player might actually be fantastic, but you are absolutely not getting the core experience you were promised when you handed over your credit card.
Exactly. And that is exactly the situation right now with one of the most iconic, highly sought after, and aggressively marketed travel destinations in the entire Mediterranean.
Oh, absolutely.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are conducting a rigorous, completely no-holds-barred travel audit of the Aeolian Islands. For those of you who might not have a map of southern Europe immediately in your head, this is that stunning volcanic archipelago sitting right off the northern coast of Sicily, surrounded by the deep blue of the Tyrrhenian Sea.
It's gorgeous, but yeah, it's complicated.
So complicated. We're looking specifically at the realities on the ground for the upcoming 2026 and 2027 seasons. Our mission today is to answer a simple but potentially very expensive question for you. Is this iconic, deeply romanticized destination actually worth the friction and the money right now?
And to get to the bottom of that, we are synthesizing data from a remarkably comprehensive travel audit. What makes this source material so valuable is that it completely strips away that glossy, soft-focus brochure version of these islands.
Yeah, no filtered Instagram shots here.
Right. Instead, it breaks down the granular, mechanical realities of the destination. We're going to look at everything from the exact structural costs of your daily logistics, right down to the hidden geographical traps that can, and honestly regularly do, leave people literally stranded on a rock in the middle of the sea.
Which is terrifying.
It is an absolute masterclass in travel due diligence.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I have to lead with the ultimate contrarian claim that the data presents. The number one reason people fly from all over the world to the Aeolians, the undisputed big-ticket item, is to stand on a smoldering peak and watch the Stromboli volcano erupt into the night sky.
Yep, that's the postcard shot.
But right now, that is completely impossible. The summit is closed.
Yeah, completely shut down.
The volcano is currently in a state of high, unpredictable activity. And if you try to bypass the barricades and sneak up there anyway, you are facing instant fines upwards of 500 euros, which is roughly $550 US.
Which brings us right back to your concert analogy, honestly. If the headline attraction, the fiery summit, is legally restricted, we have to fundamentally rebuild our understanding of what this trip actually is.
Right, because it changes everything.
It really does. This closure isn't just a minor footnote. It sets the entire psychological and logistical tone for the archipelago right now. If you cannot do the primary thing that is featured on every single postcard, travel blog, and social media reel, we have to pause and ask, what are you actually paying for when you book this trip?
Yeah.
And to figure that out, we have to start by looking at the sheer friction of just getting your boots on the ground.
I'm really glad you brought up friction, because the analysis outlines what it categorizes as a triple pressure facing the islands in 2026 and 2027.
The triple pressure, right.
Yeah. So we've got the restricted volcano access, which we just established.
Yeah.
Then we have incredibly delicate, wind-sensitive ferry logistics. And finally, we have creeping peak season pricing. Let's anchor this with some baseline costs right out of the gate so you have a solid mental framework of what we're talking about.
Lay them out.
Okay, just to get from the mainland Sicilian port of Milazzo to the main island hub of Lipari on a passenger hydrofoil, you're looking at about $18 US for a 1-hour hop.
Correct, not too bad.
Not bad. A very basic budget room on Lipari is going to run you about $70 US in the shoulder season. But that exact same room is going to double in price in August.
Ouch.
Yeah. And if you want to do a guided trek on the lower legally permitted slopes of Stromboli, that's $30 to $45 US.
Wow.
And a standard mid-range sit-down dinner. Expect to drop $30 to $50 US a head.
Those numbers are just crucial to internalize because they establish the baseline burn rate of simply existing in this environment. But what's truly fascinating here, and what you really have to grasp as a traveler, is the massive disconnect between the marketing of the Aeolians and the geological reality on the ground.
The reality is totally different.
It is. These islands are sold globally as a wild, untamed, uncrowded alternative to places like Capri or the Amalfi Coast. And the truth is, for a few very specific months of the year, that narrative holds up. But the global travel marketing machine rarely updates itself to reflect shifting geological realities.
So they just keep using the old photos.
Exactly. The summit of Stromboli has been heavily restricted for quite a while now due to this increased dangerous activity, and that restriction is carrying right into 2026. Yet the imagery used by agencies to sell the destination hasn't changed one bit. They are still using photos taken 10 years ago.
Wow.
So this raises an incredibly important question about how we manage our own expectations when the industry continues to sell a literal fantasy.
It's like buying that concert ticket based on a poster from a tour they did a decade ago. So based on this triple pressure of closed volcanoes, delicate ferries, and high prices, the data delivers its first hard, non-negotiable rule. Consider this your first absolute skip-if warning.
Yes, listen closely to this one.
If your trip is locked to rigid, inflexible dates, and you hold a non-refundable onward international flight out of Sicily, say from Catania or Palermo, booking the Aeolian Islands in the peak of summer is a genuine, calculable risk.
A huge risk.
The overarching rule is explicit. The sea, not your Google Calendar, decides when you are allowed to move.
And that is the defining reality of deep island travel that mainlanders routinely fail to comprehend. When you are on the mainland, if a train is canceled, you can just rent a car. If a flight is delayed, you can catch a bus. You have horizontal alternatives.
If you could pivot.
Exactly, you can pivot. But out in the Tyrrhenian Sea, you cannot just call an Uber when the weather turns. You are entirely, completely at the mercy of marine logistics and marine physics.
Which means, since the sea and the volcano dictate all the rules of engagement here, understanding when to go and which specific island to choose is basically the only structural way you can take back control of your itinerary.
Right.
So let's break down the calendar and the deeply distinct personalities of these 7 islands.
The calendar is everything. If you take absolutely nothing else away from this deep dive, take this. Timing is your single greatest point of leverage.
Absolutely.
When you look at the historical weather data alongside the pricing models, the absolute sweet spots emerge with crystal clarity. We're talking May, June, and September.
The shoulder seasons.
Yes. During these specific months, the Tyrrhenian Sea is generally much calmer. That means the marine transport network operates smoothly. The water is finally warm enough for swimming, and crucially, the pricing is somewhat rational. That mid-range, comfortable double room on a major island like Lipari or Salina will sit around $120 to $170 a night.
That sounds lovely, honestly. A calm sea, a reasonable price, a nice breeze. But then there is the danger zone.
Yeah, the danger zone.
The analysis flags mid-July through the 3rd week of August as the absolute worst possible time you could choose to go. This whole period peaks around August 15th, which is a major Italian national holiday called Ferragosto.
Right. Ferragosto is massive.
For those who don't know, Ferragosto isn't just a long weekend. It is the absolute peak of the Italian summer exodus. The entire country essentially shuts down its cities and migrates to the coastline.
It's organized chaos.
Yeah, and the data shows this is when crushing crowds, canceled boat connections, and peak pricing all violently collide. Rooms shoot up to $180 to $260 a night. And that's assuming you can even find a bed.
Assuming you can find one, exactly. And you really have to visualize what that crowding actually looks like in practice because these islands were not built for massive volume. Panarea's tiny, picturesque harbor completely fills with massive luxury yachts to the point where the water looks like a parking lot.
Just boat after boat.
Yeah, and on Lipari, the main shopping street, Corso Vittorio Emanuele, becomes a shoulder-to-shoulder shuffle by late morning. This is absolutely not the wild, isolated, windswept escape you see in the glossy brochures. It is peak Mediterranean summer density. You are sharing a very small rock with thousands of other people.
Okay, so if August is a stressful, expensive madhouse and May is the beautiful sweet spot, I have to ask about the ultimate traveler hack. What if you go completely off-season, like early April or late October?
The deep off-season.
Yeah, because the math says you save a ton of money, right? Is going deep off-season a brilliant money move, or is it just a terrible idea in disguise?
Well, it is a trade-off that requires your eyes to be wide open to the mechanical realities of island life. Yes, the prices drop significantly. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of island infrastructure, you are trading financial costs for a massive increase in logistical risk.
Because of the ferries.
Because of the ferries. In the deep off-season, ferry frequency absolutely plummets because there simply aren't enough locals moving around to justify the fuel costs for the boat companies. Furthermore, hotels and restaurants on the smaller outer islands like Panarea and Filicudi literally board up their windows and close down for the winter.
Like a ghost town.
It is. Most importantly, rough, churning seas are far, far more likely in April and October. So you might pat yourself on the back for saving $50 a night on a hotel room, but you might spend 3 extra days trapped on a cold island with the only open restaurant serving leftover pasta, completely missing your flight home.
Oh man, so the hack is not always a hack, it's more of a gamble.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about the islands themselves because they are clearly not a monolith. You've got 7 inhabited islands in the archipelago, and the analysis maps their personalities out perfectly. Let's start with Lipari.
Okay,
Lipari is your logistical hub. It's the biggest island, it holds the main transport links, and it has the hospital. It gets very crowded around the main port, but it actually empties out beautifully if you rent a scooter and head north toward the old pumice quarries and the beaches.
Right, it's got that dual personality.
Then you have Volcano, which is heavily driven by day trippers coming in on the morning boats, just for the thermal mud baths and the crater hike, and then it quiets down significantly at night.
And then, moving outward, you have Stromboli. As we established, right now its entire economy is focused on evening boat trips to view the lava from the water, since the summit is closed.
Right.
Then there is Salina, which is characterized as calm, intensely green, highly agricultural, and much more civilized, even in the absolute madness of August. This is where they grow the capers and the wine grapes, and it's where you find the lovely town of Melfa and the famous Panarea Bay.
Salina sounds amazing. And then we get to the absolute wild cards, Filicudi and Alicudi.
Far edges.
Yeah, the data describes these as the far, remote, undervisited pair.
Alicudi specifically is fascinating to me. It has almost no cars, no real roads to speak of, and you literally have to hire a local with a mule to carry your luggage up incredibly steep, winding stone paths to your room.
A literal mule.
Yes, it is gloriously empty, but the analysis warns it is genuinely hard physical work to exist there.
Which perfectly illustrates why you need to match your island choice to your specific travel style and physical capacity. If you have a toddler and a stroller or bad knees, Alicudi is a physical nightmare.
Oh, for sure.
If you want a bustling nightlife and cocktail bars, Salina might feel way too sleepy for you. But speaking of friction and physical effort, we need to address the fact that the difficulty of the Aeolian Islands doesn't just start when you arrive on the islands. The friction starts the very moment you try to leave the mainland.
Oh, yes, the arrival friction. Let's walk you through exactly what it takes just to get there, because it's not a simple taxi ride from the airport. First, you were flying into Sicily, typically landing in either Catania or Palermo.
From Catania Airport, you can take a direct bus to the northern port of Milazzo. It takes about 2 hours and costs an incredibly reasonable $16 to $20.
Which is a great deal.
It is.
Sure.
Or if you want comfort, you can hire a private transfer, which is going to run you $110 to $160. If you fly into Palermo instead, it's a much longer, more complicated haul. It's closer to 3 hours, and it's going to cost you significantly more by private taxi.
And once you finally reach Milazzo, the practical automotive realities hit you. If you rented a car for a broader road trip around Sicily, you now have to figure out what to do with it.
You can't just take it with you.
Well, guarded parking in Milazzo is going to cost you $50 to $90 for a week. And frankly, the guidance is crystal clear. Most of these islands absolutely do not want your car.
Interesting.
Yeah, the roads on places like Lipari and Salina are incredibly narrow, and parking is functionally non-existent on the smaller islands. So you are essentially paying $90 a week just to leave your vehicle behind on the mainland.
Then you have to choose your boat to cross the water. You have the hydrofoils, which are primarily run by companies like Liberty Lines. They cost about $18 to get to Lipari and take roughly an hour.
Right.
These are fast, sleek, and passenger only. Or you have the slower, traditional deep-hold car ferries, like Siramar or Caranti and Tourist, which are cheaper but take considerably longer. But what really struck me is the vivid picture the data paints of the actual experience at the port.
Oh, it gets intense.
In peak season, the luggage handling on the concrete quays is absolute chaos. The hydrofoil boarding isn't an orderly, civilized, British-style queue. It is a full-on elbows out scrum to get your suitcase onto the luggage racks before they fill up.
It's a stark dichotomy, isn't it? When you analyze traveler feedback, they always contrast a calm May arrival against an August arrival.
That's right.
In May, everything is smooth, the sea is like glass, you board easily, and you get this magical cinematic approach with volcanic cones rising straight out of the mist. But contrast that with a windy August afternoon.
Sounds miserable.
Imagine standing on a crowded, sun-baked concrete quay in Milazzo. The wind is howling, you're sweating through your shirt, and you look up at the digital departure board to see that your hydrofoil has just been canceled due to rough seas.
Oh, the worst feeling.
Now you and 300 other angry people are frantically trying to reshuffle bookings on your phone and find an emergency bed in Milazzo. It instantly transforms from a relaxing vacation into a high-stress crisis management exercise.
Yeah, I need to understand this better. Why are the fast boats, the hydrofoils, canceling when the big, slow car ferries are still running? Aren't hydrofoils supposed to be this advanced, high-tech way to travel?
That is exactly the misconception that catches people out, and it all comes down to marine physics.
Okay, marine physics.
Yeah. A hydrofoil operates using underwater wings, the foils. As the boat accelerates, these foils generate lift, pushing the entire hull of the boat out of the water. This massively reduces drag, which is how they achieve such high speeds. But they have a critical vulnerability, which is the length of the struts connecting the hull to the foils. If the wave amplitude, basically the chop of the sea, is higher than the struts, the hull violently crashes into the waves. They lose their lift.
So it's like trying to drive a Ferrari on a deeply rutted, muddy dirt road. The speed is actually a disadvantage when the surface gets rough.
Exactly. A low-clearance sports car is useless on a rocky road, just like a hydrofoil is useless in a heavy chop. Meanwhile, the slow car ferries have deep, heavy displacement hulls. They just plow right through the rough water. They might make you seasick, but they usually get there. The hydrofoils, however, are deeply fragile in bad weather.
Which perfectly explains the critical cast iron rule from this audit. Budget a full travel day for your arrival, and never ever schedule a same-day onward hydrofoil hop-off Milazzo if your incoming international flight lands late in the afternoon.
Never.
Do not risk it. If your flight is delayed by an hour, you will miss the last boat and you will be sleeping in Milazzo.
The margins for error are simply too thin to play games with your schedule.
So let's assume you survive the arrival scrum, the sea is calm, the hydrofoil works, and you step off the boat onto your chosen island. The very next reality check you face is where you are sleeping.
And this is where the breakdown of accommodation by traveler type becomes absolutely invaluable, because the spectrum of cost and comfort across these islands is incredibly wide and highly specific to which island you choose.
It really is. The data outlines 4 distinct tiers, and we need to look at the mechanisms driving every price point. Let's start with the backpacker or budget travel.
Okay, the backpackers.
On the main hub of Lipari, you're looking at simple guest houses or basic B&Bs, starting around $60 to $90 in the shoulder season. But in August, those exact same basic rooms are hitting $110 to $150.
A massive jump.
Yeah, and the trade-off here is deeply physical. To get those prices, you're going to be walking 15 to 20 minutes up steep, unshaded volcanic hills with your bags, far away from the prime waterfront nightlife spots.
Which is exhausting in the summer heat.
Very. Next up is the mid-range traveler, usually a couple. This is where you expect reliable air conditioning, maybe a glimpse of the sea, and a nice breakfast, often located on Salina or Lipari. You are paying $150 to $260 a night in summer.
Sounds perfect.
But the catch here, the absolute best spots in this tier sell out months in advance and almost always demand strict multi-night minimums in August.
Which is a brilliant mechanism for the hoteliers, but a terrible one for you. By enforcing a multi-night minimum, they force you to lock in your plans, entirely removing your flexibility to dodge bad weather or change islands if the hydrofoils get canceled.
Exactly. You are locked in. Then you have the family tier. A 2-bedroom apartment or a small residence with a kitchenette on Lipari or Salina will run $200 to $340 a night. Get the space, you can cook some of your own meals to save money, but the massive trade-off is transport dependency.
Right, because they're not in the center.
Right. Most of these affordable apartments are outside the main port towns. You are now relying on local buses with spotty schedules, or you're renting scooters. And let me tell you, pushing a stroller up steep, uneven volcanic hills in the July heat while waiting for a bus that might not come is nobody's idea of a relaxing family vacation.
I can only imagine. And finally, we have the luxury tier. which operates in its own fascinating, completely detached economic ecosystem. On the tiny island of Panarea, iconic hotels like the historic Hotel Raya run 400 to well over 900 US dollars a night in peak season. Boutique properties on Salina and Lipari can easily reach 350 to 600 US dollars.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The data explicitly calls out the irony of Panarea. You're paying absolute top-tier Capri-level luxury rates for a tiny rock that has almost no cars, no real infrastructure, and extremely limited basic services.
It is the perfect textbook example of luxury drift in Mediterranean travel. If we analyze why this happens, it all comes down to artificial scarcity.
Okay, how so?
Well, Panarea is geographically tiny, and strict environmental zoning laws prevent anyone from building massive new mega hotels. Space is profoundly limited. When an island develops a reputation for being chic and exclusive, when the mega yacht crowd decides it is the place to be seen, the prices detach completely from the actual standard of the physical amenities provided.
It's dynamic pricing.
Yeah.
Just like our concert tickets.
Precisely. You aren't paying $800 a night for world-class plumbing, lightning-fast internet, or mainland-tier room service. You are paying $800 a night for the zip code. You are paying an entry fee to ensure that only other people who are also willing and able to pay $800 a night are sitting next to you at breakfast.
That makes total sense.
It is paying for exclusivity, not necessarily comfort. Plus, across all of these tiers, from the backpacker to the billionaire, we have to remember the hidden fee. The Tassa di Soggiorno, Italy's local tourist tax, it adds 2 to 6 US dollars per person per night, charged right at checkout.
And it's important to understand why that tax exists, right? It's not just a cash grab. These small municipalities have to maintain the docks, manage waste on islands with no landfills, and fight coastal erosion, all with a tiny permanent tax base. So the tourists foot the bill.
Which is fair.
It is. But regardless, it adds up fast.
Yeah.
And once you've paid for the bed and the tax, you still have to feed yourself. Which brings us to the daily cost of living on a rock in the sea. Because eating on an island is absolutely not like eating in Rome or Florence.
No, it is a completely different logistical beast. The Aeolian table is deeply rooted in broader Sicilian traditions, but with hyper-local, specialized ingredients. We're talking about massive capers grown in the rich volcanic soil of Salina, the sweet Malvasia dessert wine produced on those steep terraces, and lots of locally caught swordfish.
Mouth-watering, honestly.
Oh, it's incredible. But the micro costs of these items are where the reality of island logistics really bites into your budget.
Let's run the exact numbers so you know what you are walking into. If you just go to a local grocery store, a bottle of water is about 60 cents to $1. If you stand at a bar counter, and remember, standing is always cheaper in Italy than sitting down, an espresso is 1.2 to 1.80 US dollars.
Pretty standard so far.
Right. If you want a standard breakfast of a cappuccino, a cornetto, a pastry, that's 3.50 to 5 US dollars. A local beer in the afternoon is 3.50, 5.50 second. A glass of that famous Malvasia wine at sunset will be 4 to 7 US dollars.
Still sounding reasonable.
Wait for it.
Okay.
If you want a classic cooling Sicilian summer treat, a scoop of granita served with a warm brioche, that's 3 to 5 US dollars. A savory caper-studded arancino from a local bakery, and the texture detail in the data here makes it sound incredible, is about 3 to 4 euros, or 3.3 to 4.4 US dollars.
And if we look at the sit-down meals...
Well, if an espresso is nearing $2, I'm dreading what a sit-down meal of fresh swordfish is going to do to my wallet. We must be looking at near mainland city prices.
We are.
A mid-range pasta dish, like a classic pasta alla Aeoliana with capers and tomatoes, is 12 to 18 US dollars. A fresh fish main course, like a thick cut of grilled swordfish, jumps to 18 to 30 US dollars. So a full dinner for two, with local wine, lands squarely around 60 to 100 US dollars.
Yep, there it is.
Oh, and don't forget the coperto, the standard Italian cover or service charge, which will add a mandatory 2 to 3.5 in US dollars per person to your bill the second you sit down. Tipping beyond that is just rounding up a few euros.
Now, those numbers in a vacuum are actually quite reasonable compared to mainland European hotspots like Paris or the Amalfi Coast. But there is a structural reason why prices are what they are, and it comes back to the supply chain. You mentioned water earlier. The data points out that many of these islands have absolutely no natural freshwater springs large enough to support the summer tourist influx.
What do?
They rely entirely on massive tanker ships that bring fresh water over from the mainland and pump it into local reservoirs.
Wait, really? So when I'm taking a long shower after the beach, I am literally draining water that had to be sailed across the sea on a boat.
Exactly. While the tap water is generally safe to brush your teeth with, Bottled water is the standard practice for drinking, and locals are deeply culturally conscious of conservation. Resources are finite here.
Wow.
Yeah, every tomato, every bottle of wine that isn't made locally, every roll of toilet paper has to be loaded onto a truck, driven onto a car ferry in Milazzo, sailed across the sea, unloaded onto a dock, and driven up a hill. That logistical chain is expensive.
Which makes me wonder about specialized dietary restrictions. If you are strictly vegan or require a highly rigid gluten-free diet for medical reasons, how does that work? If everything is shipped in, are you just going to be living off overpriced local almonds and a single eggplant for a week?
It's a vital question. The realities of the supply chain make specialized diets genuinely difficult. Being vegetarian is relatively easy. The Sicilian diet leans heavily on pasta, capers, tomatoes, and eggplants anyway.
That's true.
But strict vegan or celiac-level gluten-free diets are incredibly hard to maintain, especially on the smaller, more remote islands like Alicudi and Filicudi. The supply chains are simply too long, too fragile, and the ferry cargo holds are too small to support niche products.
You can't just run to the corner store for gluten-free pasta.
Absolutely not. You cannot assume that a tiny, family-run trattoria on a car-free island will have specialized gluten-free pasta in stock. If you have strict dietary needs, you have to plan to self-cater to some degree, bringing staples from the mainland, or you need to stick strictly to the larger hub of Lipari where the grocery stores are bigger.
Okay, so when you take the hotel costs, the transport, and these food realities, you have to start doing some serious math. The analysis adds up all these micro costs to reveal the true daily burn rate, and it is a stark reality check.
If we look at the aggregate numbers, the daily total is where most people get caught out. Let's walk through the all-in daily US dollar numbers the data provides.
For a backpacker, assuming you are sharing a budget room with a friend and mostly self-catering from the grocery store, you are looking at 110 to 175 US dollars per day.
Okay.
For a mid-range traveler, staying in a nice hotel, eating dinner out, maybe doing one tour, it's 185 to 285 US dollars per day. The guidance says to anchor a target of about 220 US dollars per person per day in your head to be safe.
That's a solid benchmark.
Then for a family of 4, it jumps to 410 to 710 US dollars a day. That means you are looking at 2,800 to 4,500 US dollars for a week-long family vacation. And that is before you even buy your international flights to get to Sicily.
Yeah.
For luxury travelers, it's 470 to well over 980 US dollars a day.
And the data even touches on the rising trend of digital nomads. If you want to rent an apartment and post up there for a month to work, it's 1,800 to 3,000 US dollars. But they strongly caveat that this is only viable in the shoulder season. Why? Because the internet infrastructure on the smaller islands relies on microwave relays and old cabling. The Wi-Fi is notoriously patchy, and the peak summer rents make it entirely uneconomical anyway. But the most insightful part of this entire financial breakdown is identifying exactly where the budget overruns actually happen.
Yes, because it's rarely the pasta and the wine that blows the budget.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, people meticulously budget for the hotel and the food. They do not budget for what I call the geography tax.
The geography tax.
Yeah, the cumulative cost of simply trying to overcome the environment. Every single time you jump on a hydrofoil to go see another island, that's $40 round trip per person. Then you add the tourist tax for every night. Then you add the boat excursions because you can't walk to the best swimming spots.
Right.
A simple group boat trip to see Stromboli at night is 30 to 55 US dollars per person. If you want to rent a private boat for the day because the public ferries are annoying, you are suddenly looking at dropping 250 to 500 US dollars. These logistical, geographical costs act like a massive hidden tax on the entire trip.
Which means these budget blowouts are often totally accidental. You aren't buying Rolexes. You just tap your card for another ferry, another round of drinks on a new island, a taxi ride up a hill, and suddenly you are $500 over budget.
Exactly.
And that concept of the geography tax segues logically into the 3 biggest logistical traps that travelers fall into, according to this audit. These are the specific structural things that will ruin your trip if you aren't paying attention.
These are crucial to understand. Trap number 1 is what the data calls the weather cancellation trap, or the last hydrofoil trap. We touched on the physics of this earlier, but the mechanism is simple. Those fast hydrofoils are highly sensitive to wave height. When the sea gets rough, the port authority halts services, often with 0 advance notice.
The lived reality of this is brutal. You are standing on a dock on Salina, your bags are packed, you have an international flight out of Catania in 8 hours, and the digital board just flashes Corsa Cancellata. Canceled.
Just a total sinking feeling.
Yes, the result. You now have to frantically pay for a forced extra night on the island, which is an unplanned 100 to 260 US dollars. But vastly worse, you lose your non-refundable international flight home, which could cost thousands to rebook.
The fix for this trap is purely structural. You simply must build a buffer night into your itinerary. Never, under any circumstances, plan to fly out of Sicily on the exact same day you are scheduled to leave the islands by boat.
Such good advice.
Yeah. Spend your last night safely on the mainland in Milazzo or Catania. If your vacation time is so tight that you cannot absorb a lost day in your schedule, you honestly shouldn't go to the more remote islands in peak season. It is too risky.
Trap number 2 is fascinating. It's the Panarea price trap. You know how you go to a trendy nightclub in a major city and you end up paying $20 just for a bottle of still water?
Oh yeah, totally.
You aren't paying for the hydration. You are paying for the privilege of standing inside that specific room with those specific people. Panarea operates on the exact same dynamic pricing logic.
The mechanism here is pure reputation and artificial exclusivity. Panarea heavily markets itself as the chic, exclusive island. So during the peak months of July and August, the tiny main strip of San Pietro charges prices that bear absolutely no economic relation to the rest of the archipelago.
The data gives a great concrete comparison. A standard Aperol spritz that cost $8 US on Lipari will magically cost 18 to 25 US dollars the second you step off the boat on Panarea.
It's wild.
Getting stuck there for an unplanned night will easily add 300 to 700 US dollars to your trip. The fix here is brilliant in its simplicity. Do it as a day trip.
Exactly, just visit for the day.
Take a morning ferry from Lipari, walk around San Pietro, look at the beautiful people, swim off a boat in the cove, and then take the afternoon ferry back to a reasonably priced bed on a normal island. Don't fall for the zip code pricing.
And trap number 3 is perhaps the most emotionally painful for expectations. The Volcano access trap.
Right back to our sick lead singer at the concert.
Exactly. People show up expecting to do the classic, physically grueling hike all the way to the 924-meter summit of Stromboli to look down into an erupting crater.
That's what they came for.
They don't research beforehand and only realize upon arrival that due to volcanic activity, only the lower 290-meter zone is open for free walking. And you can only go up to 400 meters if you hire a paid certified guide. Everything above that line is strictly closed and heavily fined.
Man, what a letdown.
The penalty here isn't just severe disappointment, it's heavily financial. You might have paid a massive premium, like 120 to 260 US dollars, just to secure a hotel room on Stromboli specifically for that early morning hike. If you can't do the hike, that overnight premium was totally wasted.
Yeah.
You could have just taken an evening boat tour from another island for a fraction of the cost.
And the analysis emphasizes that none of these traps are malicious scams. Nobody is tricking you in a dark alley. They are simply the stark, structural realities of geography and geology that tourists fail to research, which makes you realize how harsh the reality of geography really is out here.
It's unforgiving.
And that dictates something even more fundamental than money, which is safety and medical access.
This is a vital reframing of how we traditionally think about travel safety. When people ask, is a destination safe, they are almost exclusively asking about violent crime or theft.
Right, like, am I going to get mugged walking back to my hotel at night?
Exactly. And the data is extremely reassuring on that front. Violent crime is incredibly low here. Petty theft exists, as it does anywhere, but it is minor compared to mainland Italian cities like Rome or Naples.
That's good to know.
In fact, it explicitly notes that for solo female travelers, the Aeolians are considered very safe. These are small, tight-knit communities where everyone knows everyone, leading to very easy, secure evenings in town. The real dangers here are entirely natural, logistical, and environmental.
It's the environment itself that poses the threat. The hazards listed are churning sea states that strand you, brutal sun dehydration on exposed, unshaded volcanic trails, and vehicle accidents.
The scooters.
The data specifically warns about renting quad bikes and scooters on narrow, incredibly steep, gravelly roads. If you are not an experienced rider, a volcanic island with sheer drop-offs is absolutely not the place to learn how to ride a moped.
No, definitely not.
And then, of course, the volcanoes themselves. Stromboli is actively erupting, and Volcano sometimes triggers emergency gas and seismic alerts that require evacuations from certain zones.
But the most sobering practical point in the analysis is about medical limitations. Lipari has a functioning hospital and small local clinics, but if you have a serious medical emergency on one of the smaller outer islets like Alicudi or Panarea, say a heart attack or a severe allergic reaction, you require a helicopter medevac or a fast boat transfer back to the mainland of Sicily.
That's a huge logistical hurdle.
It is. Furthermore, pharmacies on islands like Alicudi or Filicudi are minimal to practically non-existent. You absolutely must bring all your own specialized medication.
So I have to ask the hard question. Should families with young kids or travelers with underlying health conditions just cross the Aeolian Islands off their list entirely?
It requires a very honest, unromantic self-assessment of your risk tolerance. The data provides a highly nuanced answer. Routine discomfort, like sweating in the heat, climbing hills, or dealing with a delayed ferry, is totally manageable for fit, prepared travelers.
Sure.
But the evacuation limitations are a structural barrier, not a cosmetic one. If someone in your party has a serious, unpredictable health condition like severe asthma or a heart condition, or if you have toddlers who are prone to sudden high fevers that might need immediate pediatric care, the lack of mainland-tier medical infrastructure must be a primary factor in your decision.
That makes total sense.
It's not about being alarmist or trying to scare people away. It's about understanding the deep reality of remoteness.
Okay, after all this intensive talk of friction, expensive geography taxes, helicopter medevacs, canceled ferries, and $25 cocktails, I am intensely curious. What is the payoff?
The good stuff.
Why do thousands of people subject themselves to this every single summer? What actually makes this place special? Let's talk about the genuine highs and the honest disappointments.
That is the paradox of travel, isn't it? The rewards for navigating that extreme friction are deeply substantial. The absolute standout highlight, especially with the Stromboli summit being closed, is the Sierra del Fuoco evening boat trip.
Okay, tell me about that.
You go out on a small boat as the sun sets, bobbing in the water, and you watch the red-hot lava tumbling down the stream of fire directly into the dark sea. At $30 to $55 US, the analysis calls it the best, most reliable, and most awe-inspiring volcano experience available right now.
That sounds absolutely incredible. The data also highly praises the Grand Crater hike on the island of Vulcano. It's about an hour's hike up a steep path. It's virtually free, minus a small municipal access fee. And when you get to the top, you get to see the smoking fumaroles.
Yes, the fumaroles.
And wait, let me make sure I understand what those are. The island smells like sulfur because groundwater is hitting magma beneath the thin crust, flashing into steam and venting out through the rocks.
Exactly. It is a stunning display of geothermal mechanics. You are walking among these hissing vents of sulfur dioxide, and from that crater rim, you get an unparalleled sweeping view across the entire archipelago.
Wow.
And then there are the softer, more cultural moments. Watching the sun slowly set over the cliffs at Panarea Bay on Salina, doing a deep Malvasia wine tasting in a vineyard, or just experiencing the sheer, profound, uninterrupted quiet of Alicudi, where the total absence of car engines changes how you hear the wind and the sea.
That sounds magical.
Even just having a simple aperitivo at Marina Corta on Lipari as the evening cools down is magic.
But the analysis is equally unsparing about the lows.
Yes, the honest disappointments that catch people off guard. Number one is Volcano's famous, historically celebrated sulfur mud baths. The data is blunt. Do not build your trip around them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they are currently frequently closed for maintenance or safety reasons, heavily restricted when open, and they make your skin, your swimsuit, and the entire immediate area smell intensely of rotten eggs.
Hard pass.
Number two is the beaches. These are volcanic islands pushed up from the seafloor. The beaches are made of dark, heat-absorbing sand, pebbles, and sharp pumice rock. If you show up with your towel expecting soft, powdery, white Caribbean-style sand, you'll be bitterly, physically disappointed. And of course, the Panarea prices and the Stromboli summit closure round out the lows.
This section of the data really highlights how modern travel media deeply distorts our baseline expectations. You see these intensely zoomed-in, heavily edited photos of lava on social media or pictures taken 5 years ago before the summit closed, and it creates a completely false premise.
It really does.
The true highlights of the Aeolians today aren't always the explosive, Instagram-perfect moments. They're much more subtle and require patience. It's the profound quiet of a car-free island. It's the sharp, distinct taste of capers grown in mineral-rich, volcanic soil. It's the forced, slower pace of life.
So true. But if someone is listening to this entire breakdown and thinking, you know what? I want the Sicilian island vibe, I want the amazing pasta, I want the clear blue water, but I really, truly do not want to deal with canceled ferries, high prices, and closed volcanoes. What are their options?
The data outlines two excellent backup options depending on what you want to prioritize in your vacation. The first alternative is the Aeolian Islands, sitting off the far western coast of Sicily, places like Favignana, Levanzo, and Marettimo.
And if we look at the logistics and the costs, how do they compare?
They are meaningfully cheaper and vastly easier to navigate. Rooms in the peak of summer are often 80 to 160 US dollars, compared to the 150 to 260 you'd pay in the Aeolians.
That's a big difference.
It is. The ferry hops from the mainland port of Trapani are much shorter, meaning they are cheaper and not prone to severe weather cancellations. Favignana, the main island, is relatively flat and made of limestone, which makes it perfect for renting a bicycle and cruising around. The water is stunningly clear and turquoise. It is the perfect choice if you want the Sicilian island experience, but you couldn't care less about seeing a live volcano.
And the second alternative?
Ischia, located up in the Bay of Naples. The pricing here is actually quite similar to the Aeolians, around 150 to 280 US dollars a night for a good room, but the logistics are vastly superior.
Oh, definitely.
Ischia is a much larger, more populated island, served by massive, reliable, deep-hulled ferries from Naples that rarely cancel due to weather. It has a huge, highly developed spa and thermal bath culture. Because it's significantly more developed, it has a robust hospital and better infrastructure, which makes it much safer and profoundly easier for families with kids who are nervous about weather cancellations or medical access.
To put this into a framework, the Aeolians are like a rugged, challenging, brilliant indie film. You have to work hard to understand it. It might be a bit uncomfortable to sit through at times, but the imagery sticks with you forever.
I love that comparison.
Ischia is the reliable summer blockbuster. Comfortable stadium seating, great air conditioning, high production value. You know exactly what you're getting. And the Aeolian Islands are like a breezy, easy, highly enjoyable summer beach read.
That is a perfect categorization of the three. But the analysis does point out what the Aeolians still do better than anywhere else in the region. If you want raw, dramatic scale across 7 distinct islands, genuine, profound remoteness on the outer edges like Alicudi, and the awe-inspiring presence of a truly live, active volcano, the Aeolians remain completely unparalleled. You just have to accept their strict terms of engagement.
So with all the granular data, the physics, the pricing, and the logistics on the table, it is time to bring it all together for the final verdict. Let's run through the definitive is it worth it matrix straight from the analysis.
Let's do it. For backpackers and budget travelers, the final verdict is a 6.5 out of 10. It is only worth the effort if you go in the shoulder months of June or September, base yourself on the main hub of Lipari, and self-cater most of your meals.
Makes sense.
If you are on a tight budget in August, absolutely skip it. The inter-island ferry costs and peak pricing will financially break you. Go to the Aeolian Islands instead.
For the mid-range traveler, usually couples, this is the true sweet spot. They get a 7.5 out of 10. It is highly worth it if you have 5 to 7 days, base yourself on Salina or Lipari, and take day trips to the other islands. But again, the rule applies. Skip it if your dates are rigidly locked into August.
For families, the score drops to a 6 out of 10. It is worth it only if your kids are older, can swim well in deep water off boats, and can physically handle walking up steep hills in the heat. If you have toddlers and strollers or need reliable instant medical infrastructure, skip the Aeolians entirely and book Ischia.
For luxury travelers, it's a 6.5 out of 10. It is worth it if you want high-end design hotels, can afford to charter private boats to avoid the ferries, and don't mind dropping $900 a night on Panarea. But skip it if you expect 5-star, seamless, mainland-level service and flawless infrastructure because you simply won't find it out there.
And finally, for digital nomads or long-term solo remote workers, it's a 5 out of 10. Skip it unless you specifically want a short off-season stint just to completely disconnect from the world. The microwave Wi-Fi is far too patchy for Zoom calls, and the summer rents are too high to justify trying to work from there. A mainland Sicilian city like Catania is a far better, more stable base.
So what does this all mean when we synthesize it? The overarching verdict of this entire audit is crystal clear. The Aeolian Islands are absolutely worth it, but only for a very specific type of traveler.
Right.
You need to be traveling in the shoulder season. You need to actively practice slow travel with built-in buffer days. You must intellectually accept that the Stromboli summit is closed, and you must surrender to the fact that the sea, not you, controls your schedule.
And that leads to a really profound philosophical takeaway from all this data. In our modern app-driven era, we expect every single vacation to be perfectly on demand. We expect flawless scheduling, instant gratification, and total unyielding control over our environment.
We really do.
But the Aeolian Islands stubbornly refuse to offer that. The profound friction of these islands, the canceled hydrofoils, the closed volcanoes, the steep, exhausting climbs, might actually be their greatest remaining feature. It forces you to stop trying to control everything. It physically forces you to surrender to the whims of nature. And in a hyper-optimized, overscheduled world, that kind of forced surrender is a very rare, true luxury.
It takes us right back to our concert at the very beginning. The lead singer is sick, the volcano is closed, the ferry is canceled. You cannot change that reality. You can either stand there and be furious that the show isn't exactly what was printed on the ticket, or you can take a deep breath, listen to the bass player, look at the sea, and realize you are still experiencing something incredibly rare and beautiful. You just have to accept the reality of the night.
If this deep dive gave you the honest verdict and the practical logistics you needed, be sure to subscribe to the show. New deep dives drop every day. That's the honest verdict from us here at the Deep Dive.